I want to welcome Commissioner Dorothy to give us an opening remarks and also her remarks. And then thereafter, we request that you support in welcoming Senator Crystal Asige on the stage. So as the commissioner comes on, we can give a round of applause until she is on the stage. Karibu, Commissioner.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'll try to read something brief so that we can understand what access to information is about and how relevant it is to us. But let me start by saying I'm pleased and honored to be invited to this year's People's Dialogue Festival, and the theme being Building a Collaborative Democracy for Kenya's Sustainable Future. Specifically, I'm grateful to the United Disabled Persons of Kenya for allowing the Commission to participate in this session, which is themed Advancing Access to Information to Persons with Disabilities Act. Both themes, as far as the Commission is concerned, they resonate well with the work that we do. So what do we do as the Ombudsman? Our mandate is twofold. We handle matters administrative justice. So what is administrative justice? Administrative justice is ensuring that the services you receive from the government are efficient, effective, and are done in a manner that is considered justifiable. In the event you have such challenges in receiving the services from government, our office is available for you so as to assist you to get the service that you are entitled to under the Constitution. The second mandate is we promote the right to access to information, which is Article 35. And that is what we want to speak to today. And that article or that right is self-explanatory. Essentially, it means you have the right to any information that is held by the government, and in some instances, information held by private institutions, sorry. So you have the right to both public and private information. Though there are certain limitations in terms of information you can get, but you have that right. Now, in this context, how does building a collaborative democracy for Kenya's sustainable future calls for increased momentum and urgency in addressing systemic barriers and biases that persons with disabilities and women face, which is both from the professional and the personal spheres. Where we sit as a commission, we think there are 5 critical action areas that need to be taken to support this access to information for persons with disability. The first is decision-making. By adopting laws that support participation with persons with disability and women in governance and public affairs. The second one is freedom from poverty, which requires investing in social protection systems and public services to give persons with disabilities and women equal chances to thrive. The third is peace and security, which calls for investing in leadership of persons with disability and women and enabling their participation in peace-building initiatives. Fourth, climate justice. This would require prioritizing persons with disability and women in climate action by boosting their leadership, participation, and access to green opportunities. Then the last one is digital inclusion. This means we are calling for decisive measures to ensure that everyone can benefit from technological advancements and potential opportunities brought by the ICT sector. So what are some of the enablers to ensure there's inclusivity for persons with disability and women in the electoral process? So this is specific to the electoral process. One of the enablers is to enhance access to information through proactive disclosure. So what is proactive disclosure? Proactive disclosure is when an institution is not prompted to disclose that information.
Just before you go on, kindly, may we have some order pale nyuma tafadhali? We have a session going on and naelewa tunaingia, tuingie tuketi tutulie. Sawa sawa? Thank you.
So proactive disclosure is information whereby you'll find it free, accessible in websites, in brochures within the government or private institutions, and this information is critical to enable you make a decision as a Kenyan citizen. Now, in relation to the electoral space, we have stakeholders such as the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, the IEBC, other regulators and law enforcement bodies that need to proactively disclose information so that persons within this space are able to access that information readily and available. The other enabler is electoral information for persons with disabilities such as civic education, political party membership, the voters register, party lists, and voting procedures. This type of information needs to be accessible to persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups by doing the following: coming up with user-friendly formats that can use even local languages, sign language, and also access through local settings such as public forums, local media, and notice boards. So how do you proactively disclose electoral-related information? Those are the examples that we have given, and we encourage these institutions that are in the electoral space to use those forums of enabling access to persons in disability to access that type of information that will help them participate fully in electoral matters. Another enabler is ensuring compliance with the access to information rights for persons with disability, meaning information or documents supplied by institutions should comply with the specific needs of a person living with disability. This can be done by ensuring that if the institution that is charged to hold that information does not provide the information, then these persons are able to come to the commission, because now that is our role. When that institution you've asked to give you the information does not give it to you, you appeal to the commission and will be able to support you. Then there's also ensuring compliance, such as providing Braille, which should be done by the relevant institutions that are in custody of that information. So the Commission has had a chance to compel disclosure of information at no cost, so we don't charge for this service. And key service documents at these institutions should therefore be available in other languages. I've said that, including now service charters being translated to languages that we all understand. One of the challenges that we have noted is IEBC and ORPP websites. They currently have low compliance with in terms of web content accessibility guidelines. So there's therefore a call for these institutions to enhance their compliance levels, including providing text alternatives in terms of images, captions for multimedia, and maximizing compatibility with assistive technologies. So, and further, IEBC should also ensure compliance with the constitutional requirement of the 5% representation of persons with disabilities under the Article 54(2). Another enabler is mainstreaming information disclosure at the county level. Since the devolution, one of the key provisions under the County Government Acts is that all counties need to domesticate the Access to Information Act within the county. This will enable persons with disability to understand how information is released at the county level if those laws are passed at the county level. Then we have the reserved opportunities for special interest group. I think that has been discussed in many forums. Then, in addition, the government has established a dedicated program for special interest groups. I know we all know this, called AGPO. This program seeks to enhance access to information and government procurement opportunities for the youth, women, and persons with disability. So the Commission plays the important role of oversight to ensure that all these laws touching on access to information are complied with. And in the event there is non-compliance, we are available for support to ensure that the access to information right is enjoyed by all, regardless of your status in society. Our decisions, which is what we do because we're a quasi-judicial body, they are enforceable by the High Court and adopted in a similar manner at the High Court level. So what are some of the challenges that we have seen? The first challenge is the cost of facilitating access to information for persons with disability. That is the primary challenge because that's the barrier in terms of the costs. The second one is there are still low levels of awareness among citizens, and this cuts across all persons in terms of all citizens in Kenya. And therefore, this is a very good opportunity that we have had today to engage and understand how you can exercise your right to access information. And in the event that information is not given to you, what recourse do you have? You just don't sit back or rush to court, because the court will tell you, you have come too early. You should have gone to the Commission on Administrative Justice. So that's what we do, and I hope you have understood the process. So in conclusion, the government is called upon to prioritize information, access for persons with disability, through targeted planning, decision-making, and budgeting. By doing so, we can strengthen inclusive participation in the electoral process and contribute meaningfully to building a collaborative democracy for Kenya's sustainable future. I thank you. I think it's now my distinct honor and pleasure to invite Senator Crystal Asige. Please come to the podium. As she does that, there's a bit of noise on the other side. Could you please come down? Let's clap for Senator, please, as she comes down.
Yeah, as we clap for Senator, please, backbenchers, let's maintain silence.
Check.
Thank you very much for this honor to address you all on this very critical topic that is, of course, close to my heart and many of yours in the room today, which is advancing access to information for persons with disabilities. But I stand here outraged this afternoon. I stand here disappointed this afternoon because the same access to information is being denied on purpose to persons with disabilities. I want to give you access to some information that I have in case you have not heard of it, through the news or through my advocacy work. And this is the information that outrages me this afternoon. And I hope that it will become the bottom line subject matter that we will take home with us today to advocate for even further and amplify even wider. Last Thursday, during a meeting with members of Parliament and CS for Health, Mr. Aden Duale, Kenyans with disabilities heard something deeply troubling. The Disability Act of 2025 and all that was tabled in the Senate, debated in the Senate, passed in the Senate, and assented to by the President was described as controversial. Controversial. Ladies and gentlemen, what exactly is controversial about dignity? What is controversial about access? What is controversial about ensuring that persons with disabilities can live, work, learn, access healthcare as equal citizens of this republic? A law that was passed by Parliament cannot become controversial because of implementation or lack thereof. So today, on behalf of millions of people with disabilities, visible and invisible, I stand here to seek clarity. First of all, does the statement from C.S. Duale represent the official position of Cabinet, or was it a personal opinion expressed from a public office? We require a written clarification from the Chief Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi, on Cabinet's formal position regarding the PWD Act of 2025. Because if Cabinet now finds this law controversial, then Cabinet must tell us and the country what exactly it finds objectionable in a law that it is constitutionally bound to implement. Second, we demand a report detailing the concrete steps that Cabinet has taken to implement this act since its assent last year. Not aspirations, not press statements. We want steps. We want regulations that are drafted, budgets that are allocated. We want to know that there are circulars that have been issued, infrastructure that have been adjusted, personnel that have been trained to implement this act. Third, we want time-bound implementation timelines, not someday, not eventually, not we're thinking about it. We want dates. Number four, we also see Cabinet's proposal that universal health care be made free for PWDs and access to information and assistive devices. Because unemployment, poverty, and medical vulnerability should not be characterized as charity. It is the simplest of logic. It is not controversial. Fifth, Cabinet must address the data gap. Official records list of 1 million people with disabilities is what we have right now. Only 1 million of us, they say. Even though international benchmarks say that it may exceed 8 million PWDs in the country. That's not a minority, ladies and gentlemen. That is not a footnote. That is not something to be scratching your head about and thinking about implementing. If we don't know the true number, then our budgets are fiction. Our planning is guesswork. These discussions that we're doing are just euphoric. We therefore call for a special national census for PWDs, integrated with existing registration frameworks, so that policy can finally rest on evidence, not estimates. And lastly, we demand that once accurate numbers are established, those numbers be used to inform proportional budgeting, which we are now considering in Parliament. Because you cannot allocate for below 1 million PWDs when we could be over 10 times that. Maths is not controversial, it's accountable, and it's very accurate. Ladies and gentlemen, the Disabilities Act 2025 that I labored alongside you to get to this place of an act of Parliament is not controversial. It is the law. And in this constitutional democracy, it cannot be a suggestion. It cannot be optional. If they have reservations, they should state them openly. If there are implementation challenges, then let them present them honestly. But do not reduce a hard, constitutional, sound act to just be an adjective. Because when you call dignity controversial, you send a message to all of us. When you delay implementation, you send a message to all of us. When budgets remain silent, you send a message to every single one of us. And today we're asking Cabinet to send a different message. A message of clarity, commitment, and compliance with the law of this land. Because persons with disabilities are not asking for favors anymore. We are demanding enforcement. Inclusion is no longer an option in the country. We will be waiting for this clarification from Cabinet. The country is watching. Persons with disabilities are watching. The parents and caregivers in the communities that support us are also watching. And if indeed Cabinet comes back and admits that they don't have the capacity to implement, they don't have the competence to implement, or even the conviction or compassion to implement human rights for people with disabilities, then I beseech them, whomever they are in Cabinet, to hang up their jerseys, roho safi, and allow other people to come in that will be able to do that work. Because inclusion in Kenya, according to this Persons with Disabilities Act, is not an option. It is constitutional. And that is the message that I leave with you today. All the efforts that we make, all the conversations that we have, all of the forums that we attend about this subject matter means absolutely nothing if this mindset continues to prevail in Cabinet. I hope you understand that. So it's up to you and I to stop living in the shadows and raise our voices about this topic. Because without implementation, everything that we're doing here amounts to nothing. I thank you.
A round of applause for Senator. And a clarion call to stop living in the shadows. How many of us here come from organizations of persons with disabilities? By raise of your hand. We relate very well with what has been shared here. That without implementation, then this law will not transform the lives of persons with disabilities. And I see Senator is leaving. Thank you for coming. We would have loved to have some few questions for you, but thank you for. We are aware that politicians ate our time, so thank you for coming, and we will be sharing some of the questions with you. But thank you for your work in terms of pushing for the rights of persons with disabilities. So we still have our guests from the Commission on Administration of Justice. Am I right, Commissioner? So if you have also some questions to the Office of the Ombudsman, you can have them. We will have a session for that. I also want to recognize the presence of Boniface Mwangi. Karibu sana for being with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we said that today will be a dialogue. But before we dive into this particular dialogue, we want to have a brief overview of the Persons with Disabilities Act. Like what really is contained in this act, and how have we conceptualized this act in terms of making the lives of persons with disabilities better. So the next speaker that is coming to stage is one of us, lawyer Wilson Macharia, who will give us an overview of the act, and then now we dive into any questions or comments in terms of the implementation of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2025 and how that has transformed the lives. In short, we are saying Disability Act kwa grao. Kwa grao, this act imekusaidia vipi? So a round of applause for lawyer Wilson Macharia. Karibu Wilson.
Good afternoon, all. You know, I'm used to referring to myself as Wakili Macharia, but it sounds different in English, lawyer Wilson Macharia. But thank you, Sandy, for the introduction. And the task I've been given in this dialogue is to give an overview of the Persons with Disabilities Act, this law that provides specifically for the rights of persons with disabilities, but in addition to that, was developed in consultation with persons with disabilities. It is also the law or legislation that Senator Crystal Lasige was referring to in her very strong remarks. Now, it's a very difficult task to give an overview of a legislation that has literally 89 provisions, especially because those of us who are in this room today, and I would like to believe that we are many of us, also have specific interests based on the area that we work in, or also based on experiences that we have, lived experiences as persons with disabilities or as relatives of persons with disabilities. For instance, I have a very big interest in access to justice. It has formed a large portion of the work that I do, and I have also participated in litigation, for instance, as a victim. Some of us might already know about the cases I've been involved in. And so I'll take a different format. I have co-opted one person who would then nominate two other people to help me read a critical provision of the Act, which will form this introductory session from me as we open up the dialogue to the colleagues here. And I did that deliberately for two reasons, and I hope, Esther, you're ready with Section 3. Of the Act. Can I hear you say I am?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And you have two more nominees?
I have one.
One more nominee. So please, we need another nominee, but we can still work with the two. I did that very deliberately because, first, I need to borrow somebody's eyes. I did not carry a braille copy of the Act. 89 provisions would be so large. But also, secondly, I needed to make sure that if people, and I hope nobody will do this, start walking out of the room because of time, to go beat traffic, I will have at least two people left. Kwa sababu sitaona mkitoka. So, the key provision that I'd want us to go through today is Article 3 of the Act. And Article 3 speaks to the values and principles that we should all have in mind when we are having conversations, discourse, or even talking about inclusion of persons with disabilities. If you have interacted with our Constitution, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, Article 10 speaks to the national values and principles, and each of the provisions that follow Article 10 are always read together with Article 10. the national values and principles. So this provision, Article 3, should be used to interpret all the provisions of the Act. And before we go and do a deep dive of that provision, I should also say that the Persons with Disabilities Act does not introduce new rights. It does not create new rights for persons with disabilities. It speaks to the existing rights in our Constitution, in the international standards, but also tailor-makes them to fit the context of all persons with disabilities. And when I say all persons, I mean persons with all types of disabilities. In most of our advocacy, at least from the time I started advocacy, I'm still a youth, the question that always comes to mind is, when you state to the commission, so I'll use the Electoral Commission, the IEBC as an example. When you tell them we need elections to be inclusive, they always ask you, what do you mean by inclusive? So this law, these provisions that are under the Persons with Disabilities Act, answer that question. Because as I said, it was not developed by an individual seated somewhere in a room. It was a consultative process which has actually taken more than 12 years. So now let's move to the national values and principles so that we open up the room for the dialogue. Esther, I will request you to read the first two national values
Wakili,
and
just
principles.
before you go on,
Yes.
kindly pale nyuma tuache kelele tafadhali. Pale nyuma tuache kelele tafadhali. There's a session going on. We accorded you respect when you had your session. Kindly accord us respect when we're having ours. Wakili, please continue.
Thank you. Yes. So let's get into the values and principles. And this is also an opportunity for all of you to download the Act. It's available online on the Kenya Law website. Please have it as a reference tool because it will be useful for all the work that you do. Read the first one, please.
Respect for inherent dignity and individual autonomy, including the freedom to make one's own choices and the independence of all persons in the conduct of their private affairs.
Thank you very much, Esther. Now, there are some key words that come from that. Dignity, autonomy of persons with disabilities. But also importantly, the choices, respect of the choices and decisions that are made by persons with disabilities. Now, these choices or decisions which are made in the will and preference of the person with disability apply in different contexts. So if you look at the voting process, for instance, let me use that as an example for this. I was in a panel yesterday speaking about elections. And one of the things that I always say is that, and this is a lived experience that I'm sharing, that I cannot say with certainty that in the last 3 elections that I have participated in, my vote has counted. Because I walk in with a sighted guide and I direct them, please tick this name, right? Because the ballot papers are only in print format. One may wonder, why am I asking that question? Why would I assume that this sighted guide, who could be my brother or my sister or my wife or my mother or a very close friend, not represent my will on that vote? Then if people ask me that, I tell them, sometimes I go with those same people to the buffet and I tell them, today I just want nyama and some skuma. But they also decide to put some ugali in my plate, some viazi in my plate, and my mother would actually say, if you only eat that, hautashiba, right? So sometimes someone might want to do something that they think is in the best interest of a person with disability, therefore disregarding their choices. Now make that same hypothetical situation to experiences in employment, in education, choosing the school you want to go to. And it's very practical because, for instance, we say that children, learners with disabilities should go to special institutions. So they cannot, in most cases, they do not have the choice, or the parents don't have the choice to take their learners to their children to the school that is in their neighborhood because the facilities are not available. Please read the second principle.
Equality and non-discrimination.
I think that is self-explanatory, isn't it? Can we go to the third?
Full and effective participation and inclusion in society.
Yes. So I'll tackle those two together. Equality and non-discrimination. In fact, I would say the word discrimination is one of the most overused terminologies in the legal space, but also in society. Most of the calls that I receive when as a practicing lawyer, someone will say, my friend has done this and that, or this institution does this and that to me. Isn't that discrimination, right? Treating an individual or persons differently because of their distinct identities, right? But you cannot eliminate discrimination if you do not take into consideration the full and effective participation of persons with disabilities at an equal basis with others. Now, for me to confirm whether there are still people in the room, other than, at least I'm certain Esther is still here, one of the slogans that we used in disability rights advocacy, we still use it, is nothing for us. Nothing for us. Kama watu wengi wako pande ile. Nothing for us. Okay, fantastic. So the slogan that we use in disability advocacy is nothing for us without us. It is the slogan that informed the development of the international standards we speak to, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, for instance. It is also the slogan that was put in place for us to come with this act. But now we have modified it a bit, also because it is a mouthful. These days we say nothing without us. Because when we add the word for us, in most cases institutions will send us back to the National Council or to the United Disabled Persons of Kenya or to organizations of persons with disabilities, believing that they do not have a mandate. So if the society takes steps and leaves persons with disabilities behind, we will not only blame the government. We also have a mandate in the various areas that we work in to mainstream disability. And if you wonder how to do that, come talk to persons with disabilities or experts on the rights of persons with disabilities, and you will realize that the answer has always been there with you. Next principle.
The next principle is on respect for differences and acceptance of persons with disabilities as part of human diversity and humanity.
Thank you very much. Respect for difference. And remember, I said we won't be going through all the provisions of the Act, but these principles apply to all the provisions of the Act. What do we mean, or what did the draftsman mean, or draftsperson, when they spoke about respect for difference? Part of the reason why persons with disabilities are often left behind in various sectors, and not only professional sectors, is because people believe, or sometimes it is perceived, that since we do not do things in the same manner as other people, then we should not be included. So this principle actually tells us that even though I do not see like you do, or my way of communication is not same as yours, or my movement from point A to B is not the same as yours, or the way I think is not same to the way you do, you should not discriminate me on that basis. Sometimes it just requires you to take a step back and ask, what would I have done differently for me to include this person with a disability? Next principle.
Equality of opportunity.
Now we are at 5, right? E.
Yes.
Yes, equality.
Equality of opportunity.
Now, I won't dwell on that so much. It's very related to equality and non-discrimination and the other principle. But when we think about the opportunities that are available to us in the society, or the different contexts and sectors that the Act speaks to, are we safe? Or at least, am I safe? Thank you. So the different provisions that are in the Act, how can we ensure that the opportunities available are also available for persons with disabilities? Sometimes equality does not only mean advertising an opportunity in the context of employment and saying that persons with disabilities are invited to apply, and yet you do not take specific, deliberate steps to ensure that the recruitment process is inclusive. Sharing information, saying that this information is on the website. Sometimes we have institutions, including human rights institutions, the national human rights institutions sometimes will say, the complaint mechanism or the procedures that our institution follows for the complaint mechanisms are available in our website. But there are people who might not be able to interact with that information in the way that it is presented. So the problem is not that the information is lacking. The problem is that the information was only designed with a person who can see in mind, or with a person who can read a certain way. So as we develop or create information, as we create opportunities, including political opportunities, let us also be very specific and deliberate on how we may ensure inclusion of persons with disabilities. The next one.
Accessibility.
Oh, now, accessibility would probably take a whole week to discuss. When I ask, so most of my work is in the justice sector. I interact a lot with judges in Kenya and globally. With the organization I work with, the International Commission of Jurists, international chapter. And most duty bearers, or when you ask most people, what have you done to ensure that your products, your services, your infrastructure, etc. is accessible, they say that we have built a ramp in the front entrance. Most of us think of a ramp as the only way of creating accessibility in a platform. Then we forget that a person with disability can actually get into that room but fail to follow the proceedings because there is no sign language interpreter, which really a ramp cannot solve. One of the things I like saying is, even as we build those metal ramps, sometimes they're even portable, we should also create mental ramps. Let us make our perceptions at least accessible. Let us unlearn the things we have been taught about disabilities or some specific types of disabilities, because from that perspective, then we will begin to ensure accessibility for persons with disabilities. Next.
Hi.
Hi.
The last reader was Dennis Ngure.
Yes.
I know he did not introduce himself. Labda unasikia tu tumeswitch from soprano to bass.
Nilijifanya namjua.
Sasa tumerudi kwa soprano. This is Joy Mugure speaking.
That's principle number 7?
Yes, number 7.
Okay.
It's access to information.
Now, that forms the core of the subject, the conversation we have today. And I won't dwell on it so much because I think I have already. And my colleague, the previous speaker from the Ombudsman, has already expounded on the right to access information on the basis of the Constitution, on the basis of the Right to Information Act, and specifically, the Persons with Disabilities Act also has a provision on access to information. So I interest you, in addition to reading Section 3 of the Act, which you should actually screenshot and always walk around with, please also interact with Section 26 of the Act. It speaks specifically on the right to access to information in the context of persons with disabilities. Second last principle.
The second last is equality between men and women.
That is self-explanatory, I would say. And the last one?
The last one is respect for the evolving capacities of children with disability and respect for the right of children with disability to preserve their identities.
Fantastic. One of the fundamental, one of the critical things that I'd love to say today is that disability is not a homogeneous, persons with disabilities are not a homogeneous group. So sometimes you'll see provisions or documents speak of including persons with disabilities, and in most cases it only appeals to the reader who's interacting with that document, the perceptions that they have on disability or what they have been taught on disability. Within disability itself, we have different categories of disabilities. I cannot exhaust the list, right? But also, secondly, we have categories or different groupings of persons with disabilities. So when you have discourse on the youth, we also have youth with disabilities who should be involved in those conversations. Elder persons with disabilities, women with disabilities, and so on and so forth. But we also have the rights of children with disabilities. Those who we need to actually act in the best interest of. If we do not create systems for them, then they will still grow up in a society that is not inclusive. Now, as I close, because this is a dialogue, and when I say I close is, I don't intend to be responding to questions. Now I would like us to be having discourse. I want to add one more principle that is not there, but the previous speakers have alluded to, Crystal Asige, Senator, has alluded to. In most cases, and one of the reasons why we find disability implementation and realization of disability rights to be difficult, or people find to be challenging, is because we try to be innovative. So you'll go and say to the host of this event that we need your event to be accessible. One of them will probably think, oh, so we just need a RAM, right? Someone else will say, do we just bring a sign language interpreter? Someone else will just go and print all the material that we have that is being used in this event in Braille. I'll give you an example. When I joined University of Nairobi Law School, that was back in 2013, the first device that was bought for me was a Brailler. We call it a tractor. It's a big, heavy machine that we use to write, to type in Braille. But the institution at the time did not buy Braille paper. So I did not have a paper where I could produce that Braille. And when they ultimately bought the Braille paper through the procurement process, which took ages, I attempted to do the very first CAT, continuous assessment test, in Braille. And the lecturer who received this, and I won't say who, called me. And that was very scary because the person was quite a personality. But at least they put in the effort to get my number. and they still use it to date, by the way. We are friends now. They called me and asked me, you have presented your cat in an encrypted format. How am I supposed to read and mark this? So sometimes you might come up with a solution which does not actually work for the person with disability, or which could actually create an additional barrier. So please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Braille is not preferable. I use Braille so often, digital Braille. But sometimes it creates a barrier, because if I want to communicate to someone, then they will not be able to read it unless they have knowledge of Braille. So the principle that I want to put in place to speak of right now is consultation with persons with disabilities. In fact, I like calling it ATP. Ask the person. So if someone says, please put in place measures to make this accessible and I will participate in the event, ask that person, what would you like me to do? And then negotiate with them. And then you will realize that sometimes what you thought or expected would be the most expensive thing to do turns out to be the cheapest accommodation you would provide. I once requested, I used to work at Strathmore University Law School while I was still at the Kenya School of Law. I once requested for reasonable accommodation in the form of, the law building was a very new building, and it had glass walls, glass doors, which in most cases I would just bump into. So I requested, could we kindly have a mat near every door, so that when I step on the mat, then I will know that there is a door. And people told me, oh, that is all you needed, because we were actually going to look to employ someone to be walking around with you everywhere you go. Everywhere you go. Not to say that that would not be a sufficient accommodation, but the mat would be a good place to begin with. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Wakili. I was used to calling him a lawyer. Now, the Wakili is also not making sense to me. So we have heard about the act. Ni wakati wa dialogue, sindio? Ni wakati wa kuzungum. But before that, I wanted to say we started with our guests. We have Boniface Mwangi still in the room. I know you have followed the conversations. So we'll also allow you, if you have some comments to make, you can do that. Either now or as we continue with the dialogue. But since I don't want to ambush you, but I know you're a leader, so we can give him some few minutes as Boniface makes his comments. But as he makes his comments, people, this is now the dialogue. You can take the mic to him. Yeah. This is the dialogue. How does what has been said here? They have mentioned some challenges around the implementation of the act, and you know pia kwa ground pia kuna vitu ambazo tunaona, si ndio? Kama ni access to health, kuna vitu ambazo tunaona. So kwa ground, how can we say that the act has transformed the lives of persons with disability? And after Boniface Mwangi, I would like to give the mic to Siokao and then open it out now to the audience. Karibu, Boniface.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, Wakili, for sharing that. And Christo has already left. You know, you never know that you think disability is very far away and then it comes to you. When I was building our home, I never thought about a ramp until my friend of mine had a medical condition and then he became disabled and had to build a ramp. And as he said, a ramp is not enough. My question would be, how do we organize the 5 million to 8 million people living in a different world or differently abled to demand the implementation of the Disability Act? Because politicians care about numbers more than anything else. And so if you can get parents, friends, relatives of everyone living with disability, and you organize to ensure that the Disability Act is implemented. When a senior CS like Duale speaks the way he spoke this past week, it was not out of tongue. Hakuongea vibaya hivyo kwa sababu hakujua tulikuwa nasema. Alikuwa anajua kwamba dai kutekeleza hii act. So swali langu ni hili. Tunaweza fanyaje kama jamii ya wale ambao ni walemavu, wale ambao wanaishi na different challenges, kuhakikisha kwamba serikali implement the act? Question number 1. Question number 2. Mimi ninafanya vitu mingi sana, hata nasimama rais. Lakini ile kitu ambayo niko na ushupavu na ujasiri kufanya ni maandamano. So mkitaka kufanya maandamano, muniite. Mimi ndawapanga ni organize. Tuende parliament, tuende state house, ndio? So one time. But before you go one time lazima implement katiba, si ndio? So swali ni kwamba mimi niko tayari, hata nimeingia kwa a couple of the tents over there. Nimeacha namba yangu ya simu. Nipigeni simu tufanye mikutano, tujue tunafanya aje ndio katiba itekelezwe, kwa sababu lazima katiba itekelezwe, si ndio? Asanteni.
Thank you, Boniface Mwangi. He has raised a very pertinent question that how do we mobilize and ensure that implementation of the act happens? And I want to tie that with the Siokau there. Take the mic to Siokau. Tuanze sasa dialogue. What has been shared na Kiingereza mingi imeisha, si ndio? So sasa hii tuingie kwa ground. What is really on the ground about persons with disabilities? Siokau?
Good evening, everyone. Mnaniona? Nikuje mbele hapa. Taongea Kizungu na Kiswahili zote, nitachanganya. Kwa huu mjadala ambao tumekuwa nao hapa leo kuhusu Disability Act. It's a couple of months since the act came to place. Like came into law, ikakuwa act. But ukiangalia ule ukweli uko ground, bado sisi kama watu ambao tuko na disability tulifurahia hiyo moment vile tulingangana kupata hii act, tukapush advocacy and everything. But it seems like our happiness ni kama ili last for a while, then kidogo ikafifia, because we thought with the act things will like tutaamka tu tujipate mambo inaenda shwari, everything is going on well, but apparently things are not well. For instance, in the month of August, there was a circular which was going around, a directive circular stating from this guy is called, I think, Felix Kosgei. Ilikuwa inasema that all public hospitals from level 3 to level 4 should accord persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities wanafaa wapate matibabu kwa bure. Lakini swali linakuwa, hilo limewasilishwa hospitali, limepitishwa, kwa sababu kunaweza kuwa na directive, but hiyo directive imekuwa implemented aje? Kwa hivyo hata kama wewe mtu uko na ulemavu umeenda hospitali na hiyo directive ilipeanwa, lakini hakuna mikakati ambayo imefuatwa ku make sure to ensure that your directive it's in place inakuwa changamoto. Kwa hivyo at the end of the day unarudi kwa mfuko, unatoa pesa ndiposa upate matibabu. Kwa hivyo it's true we have the act, but the implementation is not there. What are there? It's just directives which are not being implemented, na ni mkono mtupu tu yenye tunangojea tuone kama tutalamba. So those are some of the issues zenye ground watu pia wanateta, na ile ingine pia ni kuhusu registration. Act ndiposa mtu atambulike kama ni mtu ambaye ako na ulemavu, lazima ukuwe umejitambulisha, umekuwa registered as a person with disabilities. But ni watu wangapi huko mashinani wamepata huduma ya kupata huo utambulisho? Kwa hivyo hizo ndo baadhi ya changamoto ambazo ninaweza sema ziko huko katika grassroots. Thank you.
Yeah. Makofi kwa Siokao. So as we think about that, any comment from the so there's
just a minute. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Habari zenu. Kwa majina naitwa Karen Muriuki na wakilisha kikundi cha walemavu wanaohusika na mambo ya wazazi na pia kwa ulemavu wa usonji. I'll try my best and mix. Now, sitaongea mengi kwa sababu kuna mambo ambayo imenikera sana, na ni juu ya wazazi kutopewa, yani kutotoza ushuru. Mara nyingi tunaona wazazi wanaumia sana wakituza watoto wao wenye ulemavu, na pia hizo dawa unazopata. I'm just going to try. We find that parents who have kids with disabilities are just paying taxes. Yet, we, in the Disabilities Act itself, if you look at Section 56 of the Act, it gives incentives to parents who have children with disabilities. And still, many parents are pleading, where are we in this mechanism? I don't know whether we have any caregiver in this room who has a child with a disability, or any child, or any adult or adolescent with a disability with higher support needs. They have been waiting for long for their voices to be heard and for them to receive tax exemptions. Wazazi wameumia sana. Wanashinda na watoto wao kwa nyumba, hawana kazi na bado wanatoza ushuru. What are we doing to caution that? Thank you.
Yeah, so we are hearing about more challenges, more challenges facing a community of persons with disabilities. So we can get one more comment from the audience, as we also think of the issues of intersectionality, and I will give the mic back to Juma after him.
Mine is not a question, but a challenge. Yeah. I think hii wiki, ama kama si wiki, last week, tuliona kwa runinga kwamba mahali fulani kwa shule kuna mwalimu ambaye alibaka msichana mwenye, I think she was deaf, something like that. Mliona hiyo? Yeah, you witnessed that. Yeah, lakini ile ilinishangaza, ingawa kuna hiyo ambayo mwalimu aliweza kubaka msichana, mtoto ambaye hajiwezi, ambaye yuko na ulemavu, sikuona chama cha walemavu wakijitokeza kupigana ama to articulate the injustice against that girl. So my plea to you this afternoon is that you need to be more united. When some injustice are being meted among some of our Kenyans, munafaa munatokelezea. Because even as we talk now, I know pengine ule mwalimu hata kushikwa. So that is a challenge. You need to stand, fight as one, and we'll be there for you.
We need to stand and fight as one.
As one.
What has been shared with the Boniface Mwangi, like how can we organize ourselves, right? No, so I mentioned her.
Yes, habari zenu, mimi naitwa Hussein Ibrahim Abdurrahman. Habari zenu nyote. Kwa majina naitwa Honorable Hussein Ibrahim Abdurrahman. Na simama kule Isiolo Bulapesa Ward as a MCA, incoming MCA 2027 inshallah. Na nilikuwa nataka kuuliza swali kwamba kwa nini kama sisi disability, physical blind and disability, kwa nini tukienda kwa ofisi za serikali kutafuta contract, kwa nini tusipewe contract na wale wengine wakiwa sawa wanakuja na miguu yao, wako na macho yao mzuri, mikono yao mzuri, wanapewa contract? Why? Mbona sisi disability tunanyima contract? Hiyo ni swali ya kwanza. Swali ya pili, disability, wale ambao kwamba wanaishi na ulemavu pia tumesaulika kwa katiba ya Kenya. Pia tuna unyanyasaji fulani katika katiba ya Kenya. Number 3, kwanza hii act disability ambao rais alipitiza 2025 ili imetusaidia sana. Kama mimi mlemavu, mimi Hussein Ibrahim, imenisaidia sana, na msifu rais, namwambia aendelee hivyo hivyo, na Mwenyezi Mungu amwezeshe katika uongozi wake, aongoze wa Kenya vizuri inshallah.
Mheshimiwa, thank you. Thank you for that, Mheshimiwa, and we wish you all the best. So, ningependa tuendelee na dialogue. Issues have been raised on access to health, SRHR. I want to give the mic to Juma Emainata, and then we give to Celine. Pia huku pia. Sawa sawa.
Hello. Hello. Sami, I want to talk about intersectionality. Na kama sio kao nitatumia lugha za taifa, nitatumia Kiingereza na Kiswahili kwa sababu Kiswahili kitukuzwe. Intersectionality, what is it? Vile ulizaliwa kutoka, like when you are born, daktari akasema huyu ni msichana, huyu ni mvulana, si ndio? When you grew up, ukafika ni ya kubalehe, ukajua uko attracted to men, women, and then how do you feel about yourself? Gender identity and expression. So, kwa intersectionality for persons with disability, vile tu wakili alisema, it's not hatuko homogeneous. Kila mtu akona difference yake. Na the more tuna embrace differences, the more we'll grow together. So kwa hiyo intersectionality, let me talk about vitu wagrao vile vitu ziko. Disability Act inasema persons with disabilities should be treated with dignity and respect. Lakini mimi nikienda kwa hospitali because nimevaa kama mwanaume vile sati inasema huyu ni mwanaume, wananiuliza kwani unataka kujifanya mwanaume, unataka kupigana? Mimi nimekuja ku seek services. Nikienda kuulizia condoms kama kwa hospitali, like kwani wewe shida iko wapi? You know, like unataka condoms na bado unakaa mwanaume, kwani wewe ndio, you know, kuna director term inanimaliza.
hizo yani maneno ya kushtumu. Tuseme kwa kienda si pia sex, si ndio? Women with disabilities, when we go to very maternal death. Kwa nini? Ukifika kule, wanawake ambao hawana ulemavu watapatiwa kipaumbele. Wanawake ulemavu utaambiwa weka hapo, nani alikuumiza? Kwa nini ulipeana? Kwa nini unajipatia shida zingine? Si ubaki na shida moja. Sasa what is that really? We are supposed to be treated with dignity and respect. Kwa nini tunafanyia? Ama ukienda ukishajifungua unafanya ligation unakatwa uzazi. Sisi tunataka kuzaa, sio tunataka kuongeza, hatuongezi disabilities, tunaongeza watu kwa jamii. What is any, you know, okay, I become very passionate about. That's why yani vitu kwa ground ziko very different. Tukikuja kwa issues that LGBTQ soji. The law inasema treat us with dignity and respect. Ni penal code bado inatumaliza. Sasa kama mimi Juma nikipigwa na ndugu yangu, si ndio? Niende kwa polisi, niseme nimepigwa ndugu yangu. Swali ya kwanza itakuwa ulifanya nini ukapigwa na ndugu yako? Unaona? Wakishaniangalia hivyo kwa like huyu ni kama ni LGBTQ. Sasa nitaingizwa ndani. Nimeenda kutafuta msaada lakini bado vinashikwa kwa sababu niko wapi? Niko na makosa. Yani kwa sababu hizo penal codes ambazo allow people to have relationship with the same sex people. So actuality, that is what I like to talk about. Thank you so much.
Dialogue imekuwa moto. Inachoma. So we are taking 2 more and then we conclude. So kulikuwa na Celine.
Thank you.
Alafu na
Timothy.
Umeshachukua mic. So 1 minute tafadhali, alafu patia Celine, alafu tunafungia hapa.
Okay, thank you very much. Hamjambo. My name is Timothy Kongo Wamboi. And I want to say we want power. That is number 1. Number 2, we want power. Number 3, we want power to participate in the election 2027 for persons with disability. So I was listening keenly to what the previous speakers have been saying. And I also had a concern about the regulations to the new act, because history does not lie. We had an act in 2003, and the impact that the act had after all those years is not that tangible. And now we have a new act, and yet the regulations are being delayed. Therefore, it begs the question, if it is being delayed like that, for aspirants who have disability, like my brother from the Northeastern wants to vie for the MCA of Bulahawa, something ward. How is the regulation going to affect this person who is going to vie? Because if the regulations are not there, then it means also there is a lacuna or there is a gray area even in the election process. So my concern is about the regulations and also the way that persons with disability are going to participate in the election come 2027. Thank you.
Thank you. So concerns are around regulations to operationalize the act. We give the mic to Celine. Na tafadhali tutumie dakika moja, muda umeyoyoma.
Umeyoyoma. Sawa sawa, asante. Mimi yangu ni short. About the Inua Jamii, I want to just speak about that. Most of the time, we are told that it is specified. Only severe persons with disability are allowed to access the Inua Jamii fund. So, and at times that blocks the real needy persons with disability who are supposed to access the funds. So how do we make sure that we don't discriminate persons with disability within persons with disability? Because when you say that the only persons who can access the funds are the severe persons with disability, at times it doesn't really make sense for us. Because when we see ukiwa mzee, bora tuwe ni mzee umefikisha age, uko eligible. Bora wewe ni orphan na uko na the documents of being orphan, you are eligible. But when it comes to persons with disability, you are told that you can only access the funds when you are severe. Thank you.
Sawa. Over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Walemavu power. Walemavu rare. Thank you so much. My name is Judy Oyo, and I advocate for persons with disability. I'm also an active member of DAP-K, that is Democratic Action Party of Kenya. I'm the chairperson of Disability League. Now, aside from that, when we come back to the act and the policies that have been made, when we try to look at it so deeply, it has indicated on the opportunities for persons with disability on the 5% employment. And you get also to see about it, we also have to check on the education of a person with disability. A person with disability with no education is like you're dimming their entire life. And if you're not giving an inclusivity in education, you are denying them a basic right. So when we get to check on the education system, I was talking to a young boy who comes from the Thika School of Blind, but now he told me that for them to do exam, those who are partially blind will have to be forced to use a printed paper because there's the reduction, there's the limitation of funding the schools of special needs. When it comes to education for persons with disability, some of us, I was denied an opportunity to be in a certain school because I can't do entirely everything in that school. So I was told to look for the schools of persons with disability. Thank God one also took me, but it wasn't a school for persons with disability. But it also comes back to the society. And also when we are making the bills, venye Boni alikuwa amesema, kama hawawezi tusikia and they're telling us that the act that was being passed is being put aside, we'll have to go to the road, either by crawling or by flying or by using Mercedes-Benz for Kate to Tadandia. And we'll have to make sure that we get there. If they can't hear us when we do a dialogue, they can't attend our dialogue, we will go to them. And we have to go to them because the only language they listen is when they see us and we mean business. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. And you are right that we have to do all what it takes so that they can listen to the issues of persons with disabilities. I am very much sorry. We are pressed with time. One burning one.
A burning one.
Burning issue.
Yes.
Sawa, tumpatie dakika moja.
Walemavu hi again. So my issue, si kubwa sana. What I'm asking now, we are now talking. Whom are we addressing our issues to? Another one is, now we were told that act with 5% we have been allocated for. Is it being implemented? Ama, what is it? That's only what I have. Asanteni.
Unasema kwamba wametutoroka, si ndio? Wametutoroka, but we will make sure that the information reaches to them, si ndio? We have the power of social media, si ndio? And Mheshimiwa has said that we will get to them whatever means it takes. Si ndivyo? So everything good has an end. So I will request that we close it at here. We will be getting back to you. As we close, I want to welcome Wilson to close for us. But Brenda has has another burning one. So, Brenda, I give you 1 minute as Wilson closes up for us. So, I will only allow 1 minute. Yeah. Brenda.
Sijui kama walio wanajua 1 minute, but it's okay. My name is Brenda Nabututu and I'm happy to be here. I'm passionate about SRHR and my concern will be what is the government doing to ensure that when it comes to accessibility for persons with disability, especially women and mothers with disabilities, when it comes to accessing SRHR, especially maternal health, ule wakati wa kuzaa, the beds are not accessible for mothers with disabilities. Plus, as persons with disabilities, hatuna confidentiality. The medical practitioners are not yet, assuming that maybe I am a deaf person and I want maybe to access condoms or family planning and all that. If I am a deaf person, then I have to, lazima nikuwe na sign language interpreter. Or maybe kama niko na STI ama STD, that will mean that my sign language interpreter will have to know that information. So what is the government and organizations for persons with disabilities doing about it? And also about climate change. What are you guys doing to make sure that the respondents are well trained on how to assist persons with disabilities in case of disaster? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda, and I will invite Wilson to close for us.
I've been given again the task to close the session, but I'll say 2 things, and I think quite a number of things have come up in the conversation, but we've also been asked, who are we addressing? Because we seem to be having a conversation amongst ourselves. When we say, what are you guys doing? Who are you guys? Who are we referring to, right? And it already shows how the priority that the conversations or the discourse on disability rights is given. But I'll say 2 things. So the first is, that was not one of the 2 things. The first is, under the Act, you'll see that there are various provisions there. And they proceed to say that a certain mandate holder or duty bearer shall develop guidelines or regulations. And we were having a conversation with Crystal before we came to, Honorable Crystal, before we came to the room. And we were discussing the task that is ahead, right? That the Act, the way it is framed right now, is not self-enforcing. It needs different bodies or entities to take certain action. And unfortunately, sometimes the action is not their priority. But we should also acknowledge one thing. We were told that this is the 59th version of the Act. We tried to start to amend the Act from 2009, right? That's about 15 years, and now we have the Act. Every time the Act was almost being passed, we would be told that Parliament has gone on break, it has grown, it's election period, then we start again from the top. Now that we have the Act, we feel betrayed that the Act is not being implemented. So that was the first thing. But the second thing, which is also a call to action, is as an individual with a disability or a person who has interest on the rights of persons with disabilities, what are you doing at a personal level, at an institutional level, to ensure that the rights under the Act are being enforced? Sometimes I go to some events, not only in Kenya but also elsewhere, and people say that Wilson is very litigious, right? Some of you might know that in 2019 I participated in a litigation as a petitioner against a telecommunication company. Unaweza search Wilson versus Masharia, Wilson versus Wilson versus Safaricom online, utaipata. But also recently, I went to a bank and they refused to open an account for me. Again, I went to court. And the court upheld my rights to accessibility, to reasonable accommodation, to legal capacity, etc., etc. It means that when my rights were violated, I am not just a litigious person. I went to claim for these rights. But it might also be because I have access to information on the operation of the law. I have access to lawyers. I'm a lawyer myself, and I'm an expert in disability rights, right? So at your individual personal level, when your right is violated, when you go to a hospital, and even though the guidelines have not yet been formulated, and they do not respect your rights, what do? Do you sit and say, government inatuangusha? It's about time that we also realize that in addition to the rights that are in the Constitution and in other legislation, because it's not only the Disability Act, we have a duty. We have a duty to ensure that these rights are implemented. So you can go to, actually a good starting point would be the United Disabled Persons of Kenya. It's an umbrella organization of organizations of persons with disabilities. It's not a guarantee that they'll take up every matter that is brought to them, but at least in the spaces where they sit or in the opportunities that arise with them, then they can raise that issue. But we should also take it upon ourselves. Those of us who, some of us who saw the decision from the court, it was on TV, kuna watu walinipigia wananiambia, si upeleke IBC kotini, si upeleke hospitali kotini ilifanya this and that. Alafu nawaambia, the court has already shown that judges already have capacity on enforcing our rights. Why aren't we using them? Why are we only thinking about the president or the senator or the minister, but not the other arms of parliament that, of government that can also enforce our rights? And then finally, ya mwisho kabisa, we are heading to the electioneering period. Before we get to the elections and then we say our expressions were not heard, what are we doing right now to ensure that what we say right now counts, that our vote counts, that the 5% appointive requirement on Article 54(2) of the Constitution, that as the next government appoints people to the position, they also appoint persons with disabilities, but not only to reward them for being members of the party, but because they are also experts in other areas, not only disability rights. That is how I'll close this meeting. Asanteni sana.
Asanteni sana, and we give back the mic to the host.
Thank you very much. Makofi kwetu wote. Okay, sawa. Thank you very much. I understand we've been pressed for time, but I appreciate your patience and your willingness to stay. I would like to let it be known that in as much as I understand that, yes, we've had a situation happening here that has cost us time and the audience as well. Would like to reassure you that from our side, or rather from the CMD side, we'd like to offer our apologies to you. As not only that, but also to ensure that at any single point when we get the time to, we shall be able to convene more dialogues such as this, where we can actually be heard, where we'll have an audience, and where all of our problems will be addressed. So once again, thank you very much for coming. I have been your MC. I will now hand over to our entertainment for the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Don. Don't leave us there. We have Machakos School that is here to entertain us. We are transitioning from the discussions now to the festival part of PDF.